right here on DBS Television. My name is Timothy Pauly, and we go up until 10 o'clock this evening, at which time we conclude with the clip that peaked. As usual, I have a very special guest on the broadcast. He is the chairman of a particular statutory body that is responsible for setting the rules with regard to various projects, especially construction and so on, and ensuring that those rules are kept as well and the regulations are adhered to, and also involving matters relating to the display of advertisements, signs and billboards, quarrying operations, hotel developments and things of that nature. Very often its decisions are very controversial, but it always makes a case for its existence. I'm referring there to the Development Control Authority. The chairperson is Mr. Clem Bob, serving his second stint as the chairperson, and is also serving his third stint, I'm told, on the DCA. Welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you very much, Tim, and this is an opportunity I welcome very much. A lot has been said about the Development Control Authority, and in a way, not enough has been done on our side to explain the actual workings of DCA.
We continue to hear of various government projects that are undertaken, and all of a sudden we hear that they've not been granted approval by the relevant authorities. That would include the DC, and sometimes we hear that those projects do not have the requisite plans and approvals. What say you to that, sir?
I think for orderly development, you must have all the prerequisites. Can you imagine building a house without a plan? There is no way. What are you going to inspect? When you get on site, what are you going to check on? And I think whether it's government building or private individual, a very rich man or a very poor man, I think we all should adhere to those principles. Those principles is what ensure that at the end of the day, you have a project that is according to the standards you require, according to the plans, etc.
Can sometimes the DCA be used for political reasons or as a political football and so on? Because I remember a number of projects were stopped by this current administration. I think the Soufriere Square is a case in point, and reference has been made to the St. Jude Hospital, whether it had proper plans and approval and so on.
Well, I'm glad you've brought this up, because the government, the act, the DCA Act binds the crown. Just because you're government doesn't mean you don't have a right to put in for the necessary planning permission. I think the only things that is exempted from putting in plans for is Ministry of Infrastructure. If you're repairing a bridge or building an existing bridge, repairing an existing bridge, or the roads and the sidewalks, these things, as they know, they're professionals in this department, and they're used to doing this. And in order to facilitate this and to lessen the amount of time it takes, they don't have to put in plans for that. But any other thing, any other building, be it government or otherwise, they must get the requisite planning permission. Because DCAC is not only about making sure that somebody have permission, but the permission is for your safety. For example, you have to make sure that the prerequisite public health is obtained, fire is obtained, environmental impacts are obtained, and that kind of thing. And therefore, you cannot make exceptions.
But let's deal with this, some specific issues.
Absolutely.
Let's look at the Soufriere Square.
Okay.
That project was stopped.
Yes.
As far as you know, on what basis? Does that anything to do with planning approval and so on?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. You see, anything you do, I think there were a number of and it seemed to have been a pattern with some government regimes where they don't bother to go and get planning permission. The Soufriere Square when we came in, when I came in, I was appointed in a year and a half ago. This was an ongoing project, doing the normal thing, that is looking at the specification, looking at their plans, and well, these were non-existent. These facilities that are for the use of the public, and there can be real repercussions if something went wrong and people got injured or damaged because the prerequisites were not done before.
Let us also look at as far as you're with the St. Jude Hospital project, because we've heard again, without us being able to independently verify whether what is being said is truthful or not, that as far as that project was concerned, it did not have the various plans and so on for its proper execution.
That is a fact. In fact, what happens initially after St. Jude's got built 9 years ago, the idea was for that building to be restored. It was supposed to cost just a few dollars, maybe a couple $100,000 to restore it. And it was going to be done on a situation where friends of St. Jude's were going to be putting in money. People from abroad were sending the monies to put this. The only major significant thing that would be done on that structure, in addition to restoring the burnt out area, was to remove the asbestos, which was said to be dangerous. Mm-hmm. And then there was a change of administration and stuff like that. And again, a year and a half ago when I came in, I had the opportunity to go in again and check and see, and no plans could be produced for what was on the ground, what was done. Finally, they produced some drawings, but nobody could ascertain were these drawings representative of what was under the ground. Where were the engineering drawings or the structural drawings? How much steel went in, etc. There was no such thing. So we had to serve on them what is called an enforcement notice, to serve on them and say, look here, stop, give us your plans, etc. Otherwise, you will not be allowed to continue as the law prescribes.
In such instances, shouldn't the Development Control Authority take full responsibility for what has happened? Because it appears that there's a serious dereliction of duty. Why would a project of this magnitude, to the tune of several $1 million, be allowed to be undertaken without the necessary approval? And you have a Development Control Authority, a national body that is responsible to ensure that projects of that nature are undertaken with regard to its adherence to the various rules and regulations. I mean, this is not happening in Timbuktu where nobody can see, but it's happening in the southern town of the island, a well-publicized project. Why would the Development Control Authority now basically be reacting? Is it the case that it was turning a blind eye to such issues because primarily it is being undertaken by the government or central government?
You see, we have to put this thing in correct perspective. Whenever government changes, the board of the Development Control Authority changes. The Act has never changed. The Act has always said what it says from, first of all, the 1973 Act, which first created the Development Control Authority, and the new 2001 Act, which is called the Physical Planning and Development Act.
That's number 29 of 2001.
That's right. I see you've done your homework, and that's good. So that I can't be responsible for the board that preceded me. But the minute I come in, it is my duty to look and see developments that are ongoing, do they have the prerequisite permissions?
But that should be a mandate of every board, irrespective of which administration is in office. So it doesn't stand to reason that political parties or governments influence the work of the Development Control Authority. So even this government might be influencing the work of this DCA.
No, I agree. I hear you, what you're saying there. But I think if you look fairly, I mean, the performance of the board before me, I cannot be held responsible for it. But the act was there.
Mm-hmm.
That they failed in their duty to exercise the provisions of the act cannot hang in my domain. And I certainly agree with you. It ought not to have been so. But the fact remains that's how it was. But every time I know I have been on the board, I have no fear or favor for anyone. I try to facilitate any and everybody into trying to do the right thing and not the wrong thing as far as DCA is concerned. And that is why there are a number of government projects. If we don't have the prerequisite thing, we call on them and say, hey, look, not too long ago, there are some new projects breaking ground in Choiseul. They had some documentation, not all, but we stopped them. There was the situation of the new center that was being built. Was it the Civic Center in Vieux Fort?
Mm-hmm.
You know, they had no plans at all, nothing at all. And so they were stopped. And I have always been consistent in the way I operate in applying the laws.
But if the government, or any government at all, wants to undertake or embark upon such projects, foremost in its at the top of its list should be getting approval from the Development Control Authority. Why do you think that they would totally ignore the Development Control Authority and even the act that guides its existence and its work?
I think it is a very, as you've seen, a very callous and dangerous thing for any government to do. But I cannot answer that question from you. I mean, I agree with you wholeheartedly. It ought not to be done.
So do you think that penalties should be imposed on those institutions, whether it's government,
Absolutely.
private individuals?
And the penalties are there in the Act. The penalties allow the Development Control Authority not only to stop them, but to go in where they have not agreed or decided to remove the offending structure. The DCA can go in there and remove it and then charge them for the removal of these things and putting it right. And it doesn't matter what, as I explained to you. This act binds the crown. This is one of the few acts that bind government. Government cannot say, no, we don't need Development Control Authority permission or planning permission because we are government. No, it's not so.
In the cases that we cited, the civic project over in Vieux Fort,
yeah.
Why wasn't punitive action taken against the government?
When we came in, we asked them to stop and put in their applications. The applications never came, but they stopped. I think at this stage it would look, particularly in the circumstances, it would look like a witch hunt. And as I say, Development Control Authority is really there to help and facilitate. What Development Control Authority does is to ensure an orderly environment for everyone living in the community so that everybody will feel facilitated. Yeah.
But everyone do not feel that they're being dealt with fairly by the Development Control Authority. The ordinary man in the street, the ordinary man who wants to construct a shack, he's taking note and he's seeing that more prominent citizens, wealthy citizens, are getting away with flouting the regulations that are there to guide the work of the Development Control Authority. But with the greatest of ease, the DCA would certainly be taking strong action against those defenseless poor people.
Well, you see, this is a perception and not fact. For example, since a year and a half ago, there have been a number of vendors and persons putting shacks and obstructions on the sidewalk and so, which is clearly against the law. And on a number of occasions, we have gone to them and say, look, you cannot do this. We've served them on a number of occasions. They ignore. They ignore the notices. Last week, there was a little shop opposite, well, a shack opposite Victoria Hospital. Mm-hmm. And for years, they've been asking people to desist, to take down that structure, and find a more proper place to carry out their way. They refuse. Finally, I served them an abatement notice, as was under the law. And truth be told, when I went back to them last week, they took it down. You know. But had I not go back on several occasions to them, it would have been there. Now, people generally believe that if you don't allow them to do something that they think they're doing because of they're making a living, you don't like them. But it is no different to a guy has a motor car, he doesn't have a license, and he's going to drive the car without a license. If you stop him, he'll say, because he's a Malaway, you stop him, and the other fellows driving and he's sure they don't have license. But it doesn't work so. The law is applicable to everybody. And the other thing about the Development Control Authority is that you have redress. There is an appeals tribunal, and anybody can appeal against a decision. The steps and procedure and process is there clearly.
What are the steps and procedures?
There is a tribunal that is set up, and if you want to appeal, you state your case, your right, to the PS of physical planning, and state in your case, and then an appointment is made for your appeal to be heard by the tribunal.
Now, in the case of the structure which is located very close to the Victoria Hospital,
yeah.
Why was it asked? Why was the need to remove it?
Well, first of all, people have to understand you cannot construct on other people's property. You must have a right to land, either by lease or either by buying, for you to be able to develop that land. Those people are either developing on the street, on the sidewalk, on crown lands. Now, there are particular reasons why these pieces of lands are there available. They may be empty, yes, but they're easement. They are for persons to put on the electricity poles, to put your water pipes, etc., and those amenities. And once this is compromised, then it is a difficulty for everybody who lives in the community, because you can no longer have access to a pipe to be repaired, etc. People must own land before they develop the land.
But you'll agree, Mr. Klembob, that it is so difficult for many people in St. Lucia to own land right now, because the cost could be so prohibitive. And even when your National Housing Corporation would talk about affordable housing, it's sometimes a little over $100,000, $200,000 that is beyond the reach of many people. I know that as a DCA, Development Control Authority, that would not be your responsibility to look at, the downtrodden and so on. But what about those people who really cannot own a piece of their homeland?
Well, I think that there have been a number of programs and projects which governments on both sides have put in place. I'm sure you've heard of the PROUD program. After the Hurricane Thomas in Soufrière, the government built in Mocha some houses, and this was very affordable. And they allowed, and then in conjunction with the cooperative, the Fonds Social Cooperative, I think, they were able to get 100% financing, and the lands were sold to them very cheaply. Now, these were government lands, and that is one of another good reason why people should not go and compromise government lands. If there were squatters on those lands, government would not have been able to develop those houses there at Mocha. So people decide they're just going to go onto the land, take a piece of land, build it, and hope that they can depend on the politicians to protect them. But what they're doing is they're creating a problem for all the like persons like themselves.
In the case of St. Lucia, land is a finite resource. I mean, in Ghana, people can literally build anywhere because it's a vast country. But do you think that there's need for us to look at the proper distribution of land? Not give people, but obviously there are some people who are in need of land to build a house. They do not want to have a mansion there, something that's palatial, but they just want to survive. Do you think that there's needs for a program for the government on the whole, island-wide, to look at those cases? Because you made reference to the unplanned development and the government reacting a few years ago and so on. Those are basically isolated cases. You would realize that governments on the whole in St. Lucia, we have not done enough to address the housing situation on the island.
Well, I beg to differ. I can see where you're coming from.
No, but Mr. Bob, when was the last time we had a major housing project in St. Lucia? I mean, you had Sans Souci at one time. Before that, you had Independent City, you have Entrepot, and so on.
Yes, but you see, it's just going back to the very first thing you said. Affordable housing. I mean, for persons to expect, because I'm not working, I must have a house.
And because I'm St. Lucian also.
Because I'm St. Lucian.
My navel string is buried here.
Yes.
You have CIP and people are coming in, those who can afford and purchase land and infrastructure, houses and so on at exorbitant prices. They can't afford, the poor people can't.
Yeah, but there are lands that were made available. We had, for instance, Invest St. Lucia had a lot of land, and still have a lot of land in Vieux Fort, which they have developed. Some of them they were selling as little as $4 a square foot with services. I think now it's gone up to maybe about $6 or $7. I mean, this is not in my department, but I know this is available there. But you see, persons decide, oh, well, I don't want to live down there. I don't want to live where government has made provisions for them to have water, electricity, all the amenities, telephone, and everything else. But want to come up and go and live somewhere else and squat on in unplanned developments and create problems for themselves. There is no reason why persons cannot make use of some of the lands government had developed with that in mind. Mabuya Valley, Mabuya is not too far away. When we say that land is infinite in here and that there is not, that is talking about a particular area. We're talking only the north. There are a number of areas where housing is where land's available for affordable housing, but persons, for whatever reasons, prefer not to take these opportunities.
What responsibility you think that the Development Control Authority should bear for persons not basically adhering to the regulations for the building of homes and so on? Because you can recall this incident which occurred at Kubawi a few years ago, and even the court had to rule against the Development Control Authority. It was reported in 2014. where the house that was owned by Mr. Malcolm Charles
Yeah.
was converted into some building structure to house the headquarters of the SSDF.
Yes.
This happened, and the Development Control Authority did not take any immediate action, right?
Yeah.
But then it reacted.
Yeah. But this is unfortunate, Tim, and you're right. This is unfortunate, but again,
But why are you saying unfortunate?
because again, there was no consistency in the way the Development Control Authority, the board, operated. There was a board that decided no and did nothing about it. As a matter of fact, right now we are on a roll, and I'm really trying to start with the easier things. People are putting up signs all over the place, large billboards and so. There was such, well, I can't even explain that. When you're going up to, just before you go to Mont Lacroix on the right, there was a Magnum Wine sign, a huge sign, more than 20 feet large, and with a lady near nude on this, her legs right up in the air, and this was right on the corner. The agents for this thing didn't have planning permission. They put this thing up, and that was up there for more than a year. Had to go and pull it down. There are persons who are supposed to be responsible corporate citizens that encourage those things. You have signs that, where alcohol is being advertised, using sports people, etc., and they are supposed to be good corporate citizens. They have not even applied for permission to put up those signs. But
Okay.
they will be coming down.
Let's deal specifically with that sign, because I'd like you to clarify.
Yeah.
When you say sports people, are you referring to the sign that's featuring the image of cricketer Darren Sammy?
That is among it too. That's among it too, but that's not the only one.
Yeah, but you say it did not get approval
no,
from
there's
planning?
no. They didn't get planning permission. I just saw the signs up, and there are a number of signs by, as a matter of fact, which came up by, the Guinness and all that and so on. A lot of those signs there, quite apart from the fact that they're distracting motorists on the road. The number of accidents are now can be blamed on those signs. There are a number of situations in terms of the amenities of the environment is being defaced. Sometimes we complain about the grass by the road and so, but at least if grass is by the road, we know it's a natural thing and so. But these signs, the hideous signs, so close to one another, why is it the communications companies find it necessary to have such large signs so close together? Is there any benefit for them in this?
Do you blame the people who are putting up those signs or those billboards, or do you blame the Development Control Authority?
Well, I agree with you, yes. I think the Development Control Authority can take the blame now because they did nothing about it. But I can assure you,
And this has been
by the
happening.
time I come back next week here on your program, you will not be able to blame the Development Control Authority, because that is one of the reasons I wanted the opportunity to be here on your program. If I were to articulate for you what constitutes an advertisement, and it is there and clearly in this thing, perhaps it's better, it'll be more credible coming from you.
Yeah, go ahead,
So
go
if
ahead. Go ahead.
you know, advertisement includes any word, letter, model, sign, placard, banner, board, notice, awning, blind, balloon, device or representation, whether illuminated or not, in the nature of or employed wholly or part for the purpose of advertising, announcements, or directions, or calling, mentioning to any persons, matter, object, or even excluding any such thing employed wholly or as a memorial and so on. And it goes on and on. It's clear. And people know that. And that is why a few years ago, at least, there was an orderly situation in terms of signs. And all of a sudden, you have signs all over the roundabouts and so. On mornings, every time you pass, there's a new sign on the roundabout, and invariably there would be an accident. Already we have a problem with the designs of our roads, especially coming from the VG roundabout going up to Shock there, or even further afield. Because if you move your eye for half a second, you will run into somebody else. These are what these signs contribute to. And there is a reason why people are not allowed to put these things on indiscriminately.
As far as the rules are concerned, where can those signs be erected? Can they be erected in the first place?
Yes, there is what they call a sign policy. And the sign policy resides at the Development Control Authority. And anybody can go in there and they will tell them what is required before you can put up a sign.
What is required?
We have it right here. What is required to put up a sign?
Because it is very important, if we'll talk about rules and regulations, that we stipulate what those are. Because based on what you're saying, one would be of the impression that you could set up those signs, those billboards, anywhere at all, as is being done in a very indiscriminate manner, as you made reference to. So there is certainly need for us to make specific reference to the regulations with regard to the Physical Planning and Development Act number 29 of 2001. Have you found the literature on it?
I haven't found it yet, but it's before you can put up a sign, you have to send a letter of intent. You have to give a recent copy of the land registration that to whom the land belongs, a copy of the location plan and topography, and a copy of the lodge survey plan and so. And then a fee of $30 is normally charged for doing this. But there are some areas where you can't put signs. There's some areas, particularly on the highway,
where you can put signs.
Where you cannot put
signs, okay.
Because it's distracting.
Let us say, look at the area near the VG playing field, heading north, the corner there, close to the VG airport.
Yeah.
I think you have signs along. Should signs be located there?
No. I think you'd recall at some time about 7 or 8 years ago, they had a lot of signs which are removed. All those signs were removed. Now, this area is another area that is a special area. And you can't put signs even when it is not obstructing directly. This is an airport. Aircrafts are landing and taking off from these areas. You can have the wind and the wind flyer sign, and God knows what may happen and stuff like this. Some signs, because of the quality and so, are reflective and so. There are a number of problems. And as I say, persons have now got into the culture of building signs and big billboards at least 20 feet. You know, your road is less than 10 feet wide, and you have a big sign you're trying to look at over 20 feet wide, you know. And this is not good for the environment. I don't really think it's doing the advertisers any good.
But the picture you're painting there is a very serious one, and it appears that the whole problem is out of control. You're talking about, no pun intended, the Development Control Authority. If you will embark upon this particular venture in terms of removing the signs within the next few days or few weeks, this is a mammoth task. And how are you hoping to deal with this issue? Do you have the manpower? Do you have the resources? Because you're saying there are so many signs that have been put up in various parts of the island.
Well, Section 41 of the Act allows you to go and take off these signs and get your money back. And one of the things you can do if the person, you can then go further and put them into bankruptcy to get your money back.
But you expect this to happen in St. Lucia?
But
well,
why not?
those people, Mr.
Why not?
Mr. Bob, we all know the tradition. We know what happens. Those people are well connected. Don't you think a phone call to a government minister, to a well-placed government official, can serve as a hampering issue for you? Can hamper your work?
We had, for instance, I just explained to you, there were this development in Choiseul, and so these guys didn't have the prerequisite thing, and they were stopped. You think they were not well connected? You think they were not able to call? And so, no, but I think we have a minister that respects his board, a minister that do not interfere unduly in the workings of the Development Control Authority, a minister that knows that the legislation has made provisions for persons to get redress by the appeals system. So there is no need for him to take up a phone and call the DCA and try to direct them otherwise. Everything that's required to address any situation like you're talking about is there in the Act.
But we don't know that a lot of laws in St. Lucia are on the books so that we can make reference to them from time to time, but it's not for them to be policed.
You see, that is why I thought tonight was a good opportunity so we could at least alert people. And those who are good corporate citizens, over the last 2 weeks, we had more than 70 signs that were sent to Dedlo. We served notice on people. They didn't do anything about it. They are Dedlo now. A number of them were in front. We had taken them off and put them at the fire station in Grosile. We've since taken them off and put them at Dedlo. So that tonight I'm hoping that people are hearing you and hearing me, and that they will do something. They may also want to come into the office and try and regularize and get some advice as to what they can do with the signs or where they can place those signs. If it means they have to reduce them, redo them and stuff like that, or relocate them. But certainly they must remove them before they come in and get permission. It's up there now illegally, and they must take it down, apply, do the proper things. We will facilitate them, and so we can both be happy.
I'm watching Newsmaker Live right here on DBS Television. We are also on our DBS Facebook page. Thank you so much for watching the broadcast. We'll take a break. When we come back, we'll continue the conversation with my guest, once again, the chairman of the Development Control Authority, Mr. Clem Bob. Stay with us.
find who the owner is, and so then the property is taken down by government, and the land is then going into the crown.
Again, it appears that we have not had a development control authority in St. Lucia in existence for a very long time, because we continue to have those abandoned houses in the capital of all places, where we traverse, where we see those buildings, where people of unsound mind, destitute, and so on, homeless people occupying those structures. We've had examples as well of those buildings and structures being destroyed by fire, serving as a major hazard to other properties in the capital. And yet still, the Development Control Authority has not done anything to address that issue.
Well, I think in fairness to the DCA and the staff, they are again under resourced, but I believe that the effort can be made where, because the legislation gives you the right to go and do this and recover, more of that should be done. But I think, though, the staff is really stretched out. We have
to deal with issues that are basically under their noses in the capital, in the city?
Yes. Well, for example, to just demolish one building takes a number of things. A proper report has to be done. You've got to go and research at the land registry.
So why we take action when there is a fire? When those buildings go up in flames, right? We take action. So must it come to that?
Well, I agree with you. It ought not to, although too often that is how it happens. But I have to agree with you that going forward, we have to do.
Well, apart from resources, Mr. Bob, apart from resources, what is preventing the Development Control Authority from carrying out its work, its functions, duties?
The DCA requires assistance. For instance, in some areas, when an enforcement notice is issued, and if the person don't come up, you take them to court. They don't show up for court, etc., and so on. And it's always the so-called people you classified a while ago, the marginalized, and so they don't show up in court. Mm-hmm. Case go on for a long time, and then it goes to the next step, and so that is the problem. It keeps this thing. The other thing too is that the staff of the physical planning, they have a lot to do of proving. They have more than 1,000 applications a year for buildings, land developments, whether it is lots, etc., and so on, which takes a lot of time to do, to investigate, to be able to get all the facts and so, and to decide how this impact on the overall development of the particular area. The land uses and how the land uses impact on the community you're dealing with, and so takes a lot of time. Now, the DCA has about 8 inspectors, building inspectors,
for the entire island. Yeah.
For the whole island. We have found that those guys that intend on perpetuating the illegal developments are able to go down on a weekend, for example. You dig a foundation and think you pass there, and then the house is right up. In the appeals process, sometimes they go, when they get to the judge or magistrate, and they say to them, the judge and magistrate say to you, why did you allow this guy to finish this building? So I will have to give him time to either relocate, get some place to go, and so on. But I will not allow you to demolish it at this time because you allow him to go. But these are some of the peculiarities we get in this thing.
So how you deal with that problem? Because you have a function, you have duties, the function, you came into existence as a result of an act of
Yes,
Parliament.
absolutely.
And therefore, it would appear that your existence is only in name if you cannot carry out your functions across the board as far as the various stipulations are concerned.
Well, first of all, as I say, it's one of resources. We have been able, I think if we look in the budget, we'll see there's a little more resources for DCA and this. There is also the situation of the board being cognizant that you don't really need new monies to do a number of things. The people perpetuating the infringements, you can get them to pay for this. We now have 2 lawyers in the department instead of 1, and the number of cases, etc., and so on, we can handle many more.
The other problem with that's quite prevalent is coconut vending.
Yeah.
In the nation's capital as well as in the northern part of the island. How are you dealing with that particular problem? Because you have to tread very carefully, I imagine. Because,
That's
in the main again, as we normally hear, talking about poor people who are trying to eke out a living, and they're not depending on the state for any kind of sustenance and so on. So, or subsistence. Why not facilitate them? How can they be facilitated?
They can
instead of just asking them to relocate.
No, the process is clear. First of all, we had a situation of leptospirosis not too long ago. A lot of people believe it comes from rats. We know rats live in coconut trees. And you don't know that one coconut coming down, where it's come from, etc., and stuff like that. In order for you to do certain things, there are certain rules and regulations. For you to vend and sell food, you must have a license or health certificate. All we ask these people is, look, you cannot just come by the road, cut some coconuts and sell to people. You don't have health certificate. You have not gone to the health department. You don't own the land you're doing this on. You have not made any arrangement to use the land. You know. This is dangerous, not only for these people trying to make a living, but they're making a living, and in the process, people can die from their making that living. And I think we need to try and educate them to say, look, the Grosley Village Council, Town Council, or City Council, whatever they call themselves now, is quite willing to facilitate. They would give training, they'd license the guys, but nobody wants to do this. Everybody wants to be on the road. For instance, the incident of fellas just running across the road with the bottle of coconuts and so, 2 or 3 persons have gotten knocked down in that process, you know. And this cannot be allowed to continue. And that is why by the Dyer building, there is a lot of space, and they're now developing this area where coconut vendors can go there and be able to be licensed, to have the legal right to operate from there. And this is wide enough for cars going up or down from Grosley to swing in there, get the coconuts, and then continue up.
Now, why allow the people to establish their quote-unquote business operations? Various parts of the north of the island, all of a sudden, you have a clampdown. And those people have been there over several years. So you turn a blind eye to it, you allow them to establish.
I think you will find that if you look at what happened, the whole development of this whole coconut thing in going up the Grosley side by Bay Gardens. Mm-hmm. In fact, you would recall that these guys started going there and they were all on Bay Gardens fence, And the guys, it was said that they were urinating there and all that, and so. And Bay Gardens took on their own and decided to put some big boulders and cut some of the trees and do this, which was against the law. And DCA moved in and had them to remove this thing and push the stones back and so. So, I mean, it wasn't as if attention were not given to those things. But these things take time. And for the same reason, you see, if you move right away the next day, everybody say, because he's a Malawi, trying to make a living, you don't want the Malawi to make a living and stuff like that and so. And these situations are coming from all areas. You have the tractor trailers, these fellas had the trailers all over the road. You know how much trouble it gave DCA to go and get these fellas to remove the trailers there from my Banan there and so on. But the law was always there.
But not policed.
But not policed. But now it's done.
But transferring the coconut vendors again to that area close to the abandoned Dyer building, what purpose did that really serve? And I'm not saying it's not a good thing, but having all the vendors in that particular area, do you think that we are creatures of habit, that motorists will all of a sudden, driving down or driving up, swerve into that area just to purchase the coconuts when because it was convenient, a service that was convenient, where you stop along the road there, you buy a coconut. I did it a couple times. Buy the coconuts and you just drive off.
So you are part of our problem. But anyway, no, but I can tell you, don't forget, people will always want coconut water. It is supply and demand. And if you have a clean and wholesome product, people will buy it. And whether you have, the fact that you have 10 people together don't mean that all 10 wouldn't sell. Otherwise, why would people go to a market? You know, there's several people in the market selling dasheen, etc. and stuff like that. The other thing is, you can be sure of the safety aspect of things. You can be sure that they have certificate. You can be sure that they are licensed and they have the right to be selling there.
Should they, and I know that's part of the process, but is there a need for a long-term public service or public education exercise on the part of the DCA to educate the coconut vendors, educate other people and so on? Those people are putting up the billboards on, you know, the regulations that are required.
Absolutely. I think I agree with you. I mean, I probably take the opportunity to say that the media houses don't help us sufficiently. I mean, unless it is something sensational, they don't normally come and give the information and stuff like that. I mean, we need more cooperation from...
In defense of media, the thing is because the DC has not understood the process involved. I mean, we have an open house policy. I mean, I think most media houses would love to entertain the Development Control Authority in terms of getting the message across.
And yes, I have to, so I take that back. I have to agree because it is less than 24 hours when I spoke about this, and look, here I am there being facilitated by you. So, no, and this is something I appreciate greatly. But the thing is, a number of people thinking that, look, hey man, DCA won't touch me. I employ several people, I can put my billboard up. They will think I'll fire these people. You know, these kinds of things, and figure, look, I'll take my chances because the DCA don't do anything. Saul put up well, not a billboard, these guys put a whole, must be 200 feet of advertisements on the new site they were doing, you know. But these guys were Bajan Company. We sent them the notice. Within 24 hours, they removed it. The same other persons, local entrepreneurs, they have those billboards there for a long time. On the highway, Coca-Cola had a big billboard just opposite American Drywall for weeks. You know, we served them, and when it was reaching a point going to court, they finally removed it. So we have been doing these things, but I agree with you.
But do you think it's a lack of consistency on the part of the DCA?
Yes, yes. And this is going to change, because what is going to happen is that although the DCA is part of the physical planning and it is a body corporate, it doesn't have its own staff. The staff of the DCA is the staff of the physical planning and development. Now, physical and development planning also have a very important role. There are things they have to do, like forward planning and zoning and things like that, so people knows that, look, you can't put a house there. So even before you apply, you know, look, a house cannot go there, you cannot put a shop there, or this is a residential area. You don't have to then apply and only then to find out, no, it can't go there, you have to find somewhere else. So ongoing would be that project where the physical planning will be doing that, dealing with this activity. And the DCA will be looking at the control and enforcement aspect of it.
Once again, you're watching Newsmaker Live. My guest is the chairman of the Development Control Authority, Mr. Clem Bob. When we come back, your calls, please stay with the broadcast. Once again, he is the chairman of the Development Control Authority, Mr. Clem Bob. So call in right now with your questions and comments on the program Newsmaker Live. We are also on the DBS Television Facebook page. Mr. Bob, let's talk about the Lower Darling Road. We already have a call in line, so let's go straight to that call. Good evening. This is Newsmaker Live. You're on the air.
Hi, good evening to you, Mr. Polion. Good evening to your guest.
Good evening to you. Good evening to you, ma'am.
I'm very happy to hear that Mr. Bob is talking about the environment and buildings that should be in the environment, especially in areas, in housing areas. I want to speak on behalf of the Enchubo area. We have this building, which is a monster building, with all kinds of works going on there, wrought iron and garbage, and there is no way that we can get this thing out. It's a monster building. It's been there for years. I believe the petitions have gone to the government, to the ministries, but nothing has been done. And a little further up the road, we have all these vehicles being repaired. It's a school zone, and I don't know what happens when school is in progress, because there are all these derelict vehicles parked around. Is there anything you can do to help us, Mr. Bob?
Thank you so much for calling.
Thank you very much for that question, and a very useful question. I think recently we are aware of that situation being overlooked, to say the least. And what we are doing now is looking at the covenants, especially for a number of developers in the area. They have sold lands, and they are to try and assist the people they sell the lands to enforce the covenants.
My apologies, sir. We have a call in line. Hold on, we'll go back to that question in just a moment. Good evening. Thanks for holding on. Go ahead, please.
Good night, sir.
Hi, good night to you, caller.
Mr. Bob.
Yes.
You mentioned something about properties in the rural areas that you're advising persons to build, or you're asking persons who don't have properties available to them to go and build in these areas. Do you have properties there, sir?
I didn't hear
Why,
you very well.
why are you asking this question, sir?
Because if Mr. Bob is going to live in that area or these areas, then I think what goes around comes around. You should be able to live there too. The second question I have
No,
for
no, no.
you,
What
sir-
you're saying is that if persons are squatting on let's say government land in the north, in Castries and so on, and lands are available in the south, you're saying those people should not be relocated to that area?
No, no, no. That's not
What are
what
you
I'm
saying?
saying.
What
I'm
are you saying?
If Mr. Bob is going to advise people to go in these areas, then he should be happy to go in that area himself.
No, but Colin,
That
this is...
brings me back to my second
Hold
question.
on, hold on. Go ahead,
Let me
Mr. Bob.
just tell the caller, look, the presenter asked a question and says, and I gave him an answer. He was talking about persons who do not have land, and I said, well, some of them may be squatting and they have to relocate them. But I'm not a squatter. I have never squatted on your land.
Well, Mr. Bob,
I have
you
my
some
own-
money,
own
so I
land.
expect that.
So what are you saying, caller? You disagree with Mr. Bob on this issue?
And it is okay for him to disagree with me. I
But however, I
welcome
would like
his
to
opinion.
ask the second question.
Yes, go ahead, sir.
I want to know how people, the government, how does the crown own the land?
Okay, thank you so much.
No, I'm not
Okay,
done. I have more
all right.
questions.
Okay, go ahead.
What he
Mr. Bob.
said he wants to know
How the government acquires land, obtains the land, becomes the owner of land in St. Lucia.
Well, as you know, the government has had a number of areas that have been crowned. There have been a number of persons who have done exchanges with government. They have a number of persons government has done acquisitions from. And government, if they require a particular piece of land for a public purpose, can acquire it. You know.
Mr. Bob, it appears that this is not accurate. Because, first of all, persons who used to own, the people used to own the land, and because under the act of, I think it was 1998, where the people did not have documents, and then once you did not have proper documentation, the government took over the properties. That I'm helping you answer the question. Number 3.
Okay, hold on there. Hold on
Will
there.
you allow the
No, before you
DCA?
continue.
Yes. Let me tell you.
Before you continue.
He's
Mr.
talking about the LRTP. The LRTP lands, government was doing this to assist persons to get title. Persons who could not substantiate that they ever had titles to these lands, it was put in the name of the crown. However, these lands, they were allowed to do a rectification. Anytime they were able to show that they were the bona fide owner or they were entitled to this land, they could do this even up to now.
But they could not prove it. So they could not prove it. So, however, the people are on the land; they're not squatters.
Okay, so let me
now
ask
you're
you
asking
something,
the people
caller.
to leave their properties.
Allow me to ask you something, sir. If you
Yes.
own a property, shouldn't be able to prove that you own it?
Yes, because sometimes the parents would die, and they would probably not leave proper
Documentation.
information or documents for the people to get the property. And however, in 1998, the government went through, and there was a white guy who was supposed to go through, and they were supposed to submit their names to the thing. If you, however, not available at the time, then the government would give you, I think, 6 months to a year, and then they would call it the crown. However, even if you have a piece of land here in St. Lucia at the moment, you would still need the basic approval from the DCA to erect a small home. How, Mr. Bob, you actually saying that the normal citizens, if you listen to Tim show at 1 o'clock this afternoon, it would have mentioned some people not even able. The gentleman was actually saying that people working in St. Lucia for $60. How many people in St. Lucia at the moment who working at the hotel for $5 an hour? That could really build a house, and that for you to allow yourself to give St. Lucians that kind of pressure. I like you a lot, Mr. Bob. But however, it's not personal. I'm just saying you're doing a dirty job that people may not like you too much. But will you? You mentioned earlier that that you're working with the DCA. How did you? What qualified you to be in that position?
The act is there. The act
No, your qualifications I'm talking about now. I'm asking you.
The act is there. and you can look at the act.
No,
And
I'm
it
asking you
tells
about
you-
your
Hold on, caller.
qualification.
Hold on.
And it tells you who is qualified to be
Who is
appointed
Mr.
as
Clean Bob?
chairman.
That's what I'm asking. Who is Mr. Clean Bob?
But
Okay.
if you're talking at the same time with me, you will not hear me.
Okay,
Neither
Mr.
will I hear you.
Okay, just listen, caller. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Mr. Bob.
Now, who is Clem Bob? Clem Bob, as early as 1964, was the town clerk of the Soufriere Town Council. The Soufriere Town Council was the only council on the island that had its own autonomy. And as a result, I functioned as the chief executive officer. We collected the taxes,
Oh,
we
that's your
built the roads,
experience,
I built
not
the
your
Palmer's
qualification.
housing estate, I built the Blackstone development, and so on.
Okay, caller, I'd like to thank you so much. You had
No, I'm not done.
All right, your
Why
final
are you so
comment.
in a hurry?
Your final comment, sir.
Yes. Is it that you're working in favor of the government so that they could be re-elected and in the next office? Because
Okay,
it
caller,
doesn't
you're
sound
giving the
like
impression.
on the side.
Hold on, caller. You're giving the impression
It
that
sounds very political
Hold on,
to
hold
me,
on.
Mr. Bob.
You're giving the impression that there isn't a need for a development control authority. You want things to happen
There's a
willy
need
nilly.
for-
You want everybody to
you
do
look-
as they please.
Misinterpretation of what I just said.
Mm-hmm.
You are now giving me the impression that the government of St. Lucia is not working in favor of the people. I agree with development, but when you look at a lady who's selling her food at the side of the road on her property, and you gave directives to go there at Bois d'Orange, at the lady's house, and then you ask the people to remove it, doesn't that sound a little wicked? Mr. Bob, one of these
Okay,
days...
all right, okay. Thank you so much.
That's
for
your
listening.
opinion, sir. And as I say, anytime you like, you could come into the planning office and they will show you. I know people are not, and I imagine persons that feel they were affected by the actions of the law are always sore, but I forgive you.
Yeah, another call. Good evening. Newsmaker Live, you're on the air.
Yeah, hello, good evening.
Hi, good evening to you, sir.
I'm Mr. Bob, yeah, good evening.
Good evening.
What role does the DCA play in terms of the, like road signs, for example? Like proper road signs, traffic signs, what I'm talking about.
Okay, thanks a lot.
He said what role the DCA plays for traffic signs and so on.
Road signs, yeah.
Well, that is what I just said. Government has to first of all apply to erect the signs. The Ministry of Infrastructure are the ones responsible for looking at where it is necessary to have these road signs. But the signs, most of the evening we were talking about are the billboards and advertising signs, and these days more often feather banners, which that goes all along the road. And what they do is they create a distraction to motorists, and it is against the law.
We continue to take your calls. Producer, do we have another caller line? And once again, my guest this evening is the chairman of the Development Control Authority, Mr. Clem Bob. I think our first question, maybe we can return to it if we do not have another call. That's at on triple.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think, though, person is quite in order to at least refresh the minds of DCA by writing again. And somebody will come up there and look at it. And then what will be done is that an assessment will be made on how much it is to take it down and who's the land belonging to. And something can be done in that respect.
We have a caller line. Good evening. Go ahead, please.
Good evening, Tip.
Hi, good evening to you, sir.
Mr. Bob, good night. Mr. Bob,
Good night. Good night.
I want to know something. Signs on the roadside, about 4 to 5 years, you're taking them out because they didn't come up with planning. Tell me a house which built and people live in it for 5 years, would you want to demolish it?
Yeah, but no,
Without approval.
after 4 years you can't do it. But with a sign, every sign, the permission to put up a sign is only for 1 year.
Now, Mr. Bob, I think you might have to buy a casket for the UWP, because what you...
Okay, caller. We're not going into politics and UWP. There's a Development Control Authority. Whether it is the St. Lucia Labour Party is in office, we have a Development Control Authority. Whether it's the United Workers' Party that's in office, we have a Development Control Authority. Let us not look at this issue along political lines. Because when we have unplanned developments taking place around St. Lucia, and we feel the backlash in the aftermath, let's say, of a storm, a hurricane, and so on, and there's flooding taking place all over the island and in certain parts of St. Lucia, we complain, and then we call on the authorities to intervene and to clear those roadways and so on. But we do not want to adhere to the regulations of the DCA that will prevent those things from happening. So let's not politicize this particular issue. Good evening. Newsmaker Live, you're on the air.
Good night, Tim.
Hi, good night to you, sir.
And good night to Mr. Bob. I see him at Bob Hope.
Good night, yeah.
Mr. Bob,
Yes,
I want you to tell me who was the manager of Blackstone Company, if you're talking about the Blackstone that built Soufrière. Is that the Blackstone you're talking about?
Yeah, the Blackstone, yes. Blackstone was the one who got the contract for the Park Council to build those houses in Soufrière.
That is about the old cinema, where the old cinema used to be.
Yeah, that's right. By the old hospital, yes.
The former hospital.
Yes.
Where Adrian Hippolyte had that cinema.
Well, Adrian, yes, that's right.
Good. What year you said it was?
That was in about 1964 when I joined the council.
When you joined the council?
Yeah.
Who was the manager of Blackstone at that time?
I don't recall the name of the person, but Mr. Anslatus Williams was the contractor, the consultant manager for the government.
At the time?
At the time.
Did Blackstone build any part of Anchasley?
I am not sure whether they built any piece of because the Sycom St. Lucia Limited were the ones that were doing the Anchasley together with Mr. Cummins. And then after, I think Nick Trubiscoff got involved with Wayne Brown. Of course.
This is what I wanted to find out from you.
What are you getting at, sir?
I just wanted to get a feedback from Mr. Bob, because I remember the Blackstone Company.
Yes.
So I wanted to know exactly what year did he work with the Soufrière Town Council.
And are you calling from Soufrière, sir?
I beg your pardon?
Are you calling from Soufrière?
Born and bred.
Yeah, but are you in Soufrière now? Are you calling from Soufrière?
I am in Beaufort right now.
Okay, all right, okay.
And there's a question I want to ask Mr. Bob.
Go ahead, please.
What about the development they have at the beach in Soufrière against Joyce?
Yes.
Who is responsible for that?
This is a project, what came into DCA for approval was a project that is financed by the Taiwanese government. The consultant on that is Mr. Arnold, and the Soufrière Foundation has a watching brief.
Mr. Bob, let me ask you a question.
Yes, sir.
Where would all that wastewater from that project go to?
Okay. There is a plan. What the wastewater is going to, first of all, they're going to build a big holding tank for this, and the water will be pumped up, going up, and sent to the wastewater system of the wastewater of the fisheries complex. The fisheries complex is underutilized in terms of the processing of surface water and black water.
What would happen to the Soufrière fishermen at that point in time?
No, well, that is why they're not sending that water into the sea. It's going to be, first of all, filtered and treated before the rest of the water go back in to the river.
Okay. Thank you very much for your info.
Yeah.
Thank
Well, caller,
you, sir.
my,
That was
my,
interesting. Yeah.
my salary for this particular Newsmaker Live, I'll be sending it to you because I think you did a good job in quizzing Mr. Bob.
Not teasing. You know why?
Uh-huh.
I'm a born and bred Soufrian.
Right.
And if I call my surname from Mr. Bob, he knows exactly where I'm from.
Yeah.
I'm from number 22 Bay Street, Soufre.
Okay.
Okay.
You think you know that number?
22 Bay
Opposite
Street.
Selma's group.
Don't
Grove
forget,
Street.
you're quizzing an old man there. I'm 71
Beg
years old, so.
Beg one?
What's your name, sir? What's
You
your
want
last
my
name?
name?
What's your last name?
Huh?
What's your last name?
Is the Clearwater.
Oh, Claire.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much for calling.
Sinclair.
Thank you. Have a good
Sinclair.
night.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate your contribution, sir. Did a very good job there. Okay, we're waiting another call. It's already 10 minutes before 10 o'clock. Once again, you're watching Newsmaker Live. We have another caller line. Good evening. Go ahead with your contribution, caller.
Yes, good night.
Hi, good night to you,
Trying
sir.
to find out whether a land use policy will help the DCA in its enforcement function. Because for years now there has been a draft land use policy in circulation, but it has never been actually made a law.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely, and that is a very relevant question, and this is what I explained to you recently. They will have the Ministry of Physical Planning will be responsible in making sure that this land use plan come into effect, so that they will be taken away from the DCA the responsibility of having to decide which part is to use for what, etc., and stuff like that. Once the land use plan is established, then the DCA will then be policing and making sure that permissions are granted in accordance.
We've been hearing this for so long. I mean, green paper, white paper on land use policy up to now.
Well, I can assure you this time, there probably wouldn't be any paper, but what they're going to do is, you see, it is very important for this to be done. For instance, right now, if you have a developer coming in to do a project here, he must go and prepare EIA, Environmental Impact Assessment. Now, every developer has to do that. Now, this is quite an expensive exercise, and it is necessary.
You have a call. Go ahead, sir.
Hello, good night.
Yes, good night to you, caller.
Yeah, just a question to Mr. Clem Bob.
Go ahead, please.
Was he around during the time they were building the Babylon police station?
No, the Babylon police station.
Yeah.
What year was that, the Babylon police station? I came in there, I've been chairman of the board a year and a half ago or so, yes.
Okay, what do you think about the Babylon police station? The location where it is presently?
Well, there were questions.
That's the extent of your contribution, caller. You want to hold on?
Yes, there's something that I still have a question for you.
Okay, but go ahead.
Yeah, there were certain considerations that were given. There were some objections in terms of how near it was, etc. But I think in the end, the technocrats at the time decided that it could function there. But it wasn't the best possible place, but in the circumstances, because they wanted it centralized, they used this place.
Yes, caller?
Yeah, but to me, Mr. Bob, to you, in your opinion, do you think that that location should be a good location for a police station?
No, are you talking about the fire station or the police station?
The police station, sorry.
The police
station is talking
Okay,
about.
okay.
Well, you see now, unfortunately, this is water under the bridge. This DCA now can hardly do anything about it except express an opinion on it, which is of little value at this
So
time.
you cannot demolish the structure.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Just because just a second question to you again. Even to the St. Jude Hospital. I heard Mr. Joachim was on a show said that before he came into politics he was in, I think, in planning. You was around, Mr. Bob?
Who is that? Who?
Mr. Joachim Henry.
Joachim Henry.
Yeah.
No, I wasn't with him because, as you say, if he had a particular political persuasion, and which was probably different to mine, he probably wouldn't be together with me because of how the government
On the board.
Yes.
No, but I think he would have been in the Ministry of Planning, you're saying, caller?
Yeah, because
Yeah.
I heard that he was on a show. Mr. Joachim was on a show saying that because during the time of the fire, after the fire, he sat down with, because he sat down with a number of people in planning, the police and firemen and these things, you know. So I was wondering, because since Mr. Clem said that, you know, that there was no plan around, nothing to be found and this stuff. So I was thinking, you know, if planning was there, so how come?
Yeah, well, let me just say.
Thank you so much for calling, sir.
No, but let me answer him. I'd like to answer
ahead.
because the thing is, what I'm saying is there were some prerequisites that were required for persons to submit a plan to Development Control Authority, and that was not done. Maybe they had a plan, but the plans never came to Development Control Authority.
Okay, we are waiting a final call once again for my guest, the chairman of the Development Control Authority, Mr. Clem Bob. Mr. Producer, we have the last call here. We have the caller 9. Good evening. Final call for this evening.
Good evening, Mr. Bob. Mr.
Good
Bob
evening.
Boswell.
Good night to you, sir.
Yeah, beyond. Good night, Timothy.
Good night to you, sir.
Yeah, beyond the plan, the land use plan, I wanted to flag the need for parks and protected areas. So not just land use, because in the 1980s and 90s, the National Trust, under the auspices of Giles Romulus, Robert DeVoe, that group, we went around the island and produced a parks and protected area. And that has been ignored by every government. I hope under your watch, sir, that you would pay special attention to parks and protected areas. That's for the future of our children, the next generation, not just the immediate youth, but for the future of this country, the children to come, that we put aside land so that they could enjoy this country as much as we did, or live it in a better condition than we inherited it, or in as a good condition as we inherited it. So pay special attention, please, sir, to parks and protected areas.
I think that is
Thank you so much for calling, sir.
A very interesting question and a very relevant one. And in fact, I can tell you, in addition to the parks and protected areas, part of the mandate of the physical planning now is all the open spaces. They're all about the place being overgrown with bush and not serving the purposes for which they were designated. Because as you know, any developer putting in any housing development must give 5% of this land that must form part of a recreation area or green or open space. And in fact, that is one of the reasons, a matter that's in court with DCA and some of the developers in the North at Cap Estate as we speak now. So yes, sir, I promise you I will do whatever I can to ensure that this is included on the agenda.
Final comments from you, Mr. Bob?
Well, I would like to say that it is unfortunate that some people could feel that they are selected against. But it is not unusual. But in the long run, what I intend to do is to show that there is no malice intended, and whatever I do, it's because the law. I think one of the callers earlier on called and said that I broke down a little shed and all that. This lady since he identified himself by saying what this was, this lady built a shop right on a bus stop. So people now had to leave the area and go down out onto the street. We served the lady on the 27th of January, and this was an abatement, so we gave her 14 days in which to remove this thing. This was only removed about 10 days ago. And she had everything to say. But suffice to say, I try to ensure that we are fair with everybody and try and do what we're supposed to do, notwithstanding party. As I say, if it was party, we wouldn't have the Sabusha project. We wouldn't have seen that they put in their papers before they allow them to go, etc. And so, you know.
Mr. Bob, thank you so much for being my
guest. It was a pleasure.
On this
I look
evening's
forward to
Newsmaker
doing
Live.
this again soon.
As soon as possible,
sir.
sir. You're welcome.
Thank you.
And to you, thank you so much for watching the broadcast and contributing via your calls. If it's Wednesday, it's Newsmaker Live. Time now for the clip that peaked. Once again, that's the broadcast. My name is Timothy Paulion saying good night and see you next time.